Owens, and she has quite the amazing story, and she's a wonderful motivational person. So welcome, Miss Robin.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm so glad you guys are all here, especially taking time out of your busy days. For the people I heard already do your introductions, you're so busy. And it says to me that you're committed to yourself. If you stop in the middle of your day or your morning to take time out to share in this hour. So I'm glad you're here. So I was talking with Stephanie and she told me you have speakers that come in usually, and we were talking about the format. And because this is Empower Hour, I thought, to empower you, I'll share some stories from my life in hopes that they inspire and motivate you. My work is around purpose, finding purpose, meaning, purpose, and passion. So I hope in my stories, you find some inspiration to think about your own sense of purpose, whether you feel like you're in it now or if you're not, especially during this time when we are going through this major world pandemic and all that it brings up. For some of us, we're thinking about, our own lives and what we're here for and what we're doing in this particular moment, even in our businesses, and why we're doing what we're doing. So hopefully you can get some inspiration and motivation from my stories. Now, I would love, though, I'm going to pause periodically, and if anybody's available, I see some of you are not in a place where you could talk, but if you can, Stephanie, if it's okay with you, I'll just ask people to unmute if they want to say something. Is that okay with you, Stephanie?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, great. All right. So I'll just start with I'll give few of these stories. There's 3 or 4 stories that are defining moments in my life. And part of the reason why I'm telling you the story is what I just said to you, to encourage you, inspire you, and motivate you in your businesses, in your life, but also to think about the defining moments in your own life and how you can use those to help you move forward in all that you do next. All right. And I mentioned to Stephanie earlier on that I'm from the great state of Connecticut, even though I'm living in Los Angeles right now. And I call it the great state of Connecticut because all my family, most of my family and loved ones are still there. And so, and it's very small. You can drive through the whole state in like 2 hours. And I'm here in Los Angeles, and it could take me 2 hours to get a 20-minute drive normally on the 405, if anybody knows the 405. So Connecticut, I have to give it something, so I call it the great state of Connecticut. And I have a distinct memory of growing up in Connecticut and sitting on the front porch, big front porch in this big 3-family house. I don't know if they have those in this area or in your area, but there they have these houses there. They look like it could be one big house, but inside there are 3 individual apartments. So 3-family house, and my parents owned it. We had family on the 2nd floor. We were on the 1st floor. We had family on the 2nd floor and the 3rd floor. And so there was a bunch of cousins in that one house, all around my age and my siblings. And so one day in the summer, I must have been about 6 or 7 years old. And so I'm sitting out there on the porch, just looking across the street, looking at the trees, quietly thinking to myself. And I hear the kids inside playing. I hear my cousins and my sister, and they're laughing and playing. And then they're about to come outside to the porch. And I hear my father say to them, "Don't go out there and bother Robin. She's out there contemplating the meaning of life." And then he laughed. Ha ha ha. He thought that was so funny. But I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed because I felt like that weird kid. And then as an adult, looking back, I think about it and I'm like, oh my goodness, he was right. He was right. I always think about these big questions of life. And I started as a little kid. I was thinking about, what it means and why this is happening and all these big questions of life. So the meaning of life. So I said to you earlier on, I'm going to share a story and then kind of encourage you to reflect. Now, that story, I thought of myself as a weird kid. Think about the times or what you thought about yourself, whether that was maybe you might want to consider it not so positive, but whatever it is about your life in your early life, think about a story that kind of captures your memory and how it identifies you today. For example, with me, I was thinking about the meaning of life more or less. And look, who knew all these years later, I'm studying and teaching meaning and purpose and passion. Who knew? So now for the sake of interaction, let me just see if anybody, you don't have to say what it was, but if anything comes to your mind, go ahead and unmute yourself and say what you want to say about it. Be bold, be brave, you can do it. And if not, it's no pressure. I'll give you a couple seconds. If anybody thinks about their early life experience and something that is sort of connected to what you're doing now.
I do remember when we first came from the Philippines, and I was about 3.5, 4 years old, and my earlier memories were of my grandmother. And I just tried to convince her that she can drive, or we can drive to each other. And I didn't realize how huge the world was at that age.
Mm.
And I think about her, and I think about now how easy it is to just connect with each other now online and everything. And I really like how we can communicate much more clearly with each other. Remember the long distance phone calls. But what sparked me is thinking that I love being with family, and I love being with my tribe of women, friends, and everything. And that's always been a connector for me. I like connecting with people and everything. So I'm glad that even though with all of this is going on, we still are inspired to connect with each other.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Ruth, for sharing that. Connecting. Keep that in mind. Anybody else before I continue on to the next story? Okay, let's keep going. And if something, just wave your hand or jump in at any time if you feel like it. Okay. All right. So that was one story to help you think about your early life years and how they connect to what you're doing today. Now, I'll tell you about another defining moment in my life. This story, again, it has to do with my father, but it happens to happen a year after he passed away. He had been sick for a long time, and he passed away after a serious illness. And I didn't think it impacted me at all. I mean, of course, I understood the grief and that kind of stuff, but in terms of my career choices and what was happening with me, I didn't think it impacted me. But now I'm kind of thinking it does. And let me tell you why. Now, in my first professional job, I was still in Connecticut working in branch management in a bank. And just couldn't take it. I just did not enjoy the work. I couldn't tolerate it. It went against everything in my personality. Now, there's nothing wrong with banking. There's absolutely nothing wrong with banking. It just didn't suit me and my personality. And it had gotten to the point where it was just stress. Not only on Friday night did I not want to go back to work on Monday, or on Sunday night, dreading work on Monday. When I got to work on Monday, just out of nowhere, my nose would start bleeding. And I have these headaches while at work. The stress was taking a toll on my body. And so one day I just went out for lunch, went to my car where it was quiet. And at this time, I was probably like in my mid-20s. And it was my job as a manager to oversee several tellers who were my age or older, and some customer service reps, and a lot of responsibility. Just didn't suit me. So I wanted some quiet to myself. So I went to my car and just sat and thought to myself, I have to do something different. So then in my mind, I thought, what would I do if I can do anything? If I can do anything in the world, what would I do and not this? And bingo, it popped in my mind. I had been finishing my bachelor's degree slowly, and I had a couple of courses left. I said I would finish those last courses full time and not doing it at night while I'm working. And then I would set out to make a difference in people's lives. That's it. I'm going to make a difference in people's lives, right? So my 20-something-year-old self, after a couple of weeks of checking with my parents and my mother at the time, and then going into my boss, and I say to her, I'm resigning. And she says, why? I said, because I want to make a difference in people's lives. So looking back on that story, I think to myself, she must have chuckled and thought, okay, no plan, but you're going to make a difference in people's lives. It was something that was important to me, though, apparently, to make the job meaningful. Now, I ended up in that job because I majored in business, because my mother said, major in business. You'll always have a job if you major in business. And it made sense. I mean, I didn't know any more, so I just did it. And then when I said to her I wanted to leave the job, she said, people don't leave good jobs like that. Because in this small town in Connecticut, for me to have a job in my 20s at the big bank downtown in management, this was like the thing you go to college for. This is what you dream for. You get the job and then you live happily ever after. It wasn't so for me. And so I had found myself in that position because I was relying on other people's expectations. So this is another point for your reflection. Think about the ways in which you have or you are being influenced by other people's expectations. Now, what that did for me, relying on her expectations, because I loved her so much, and often as people that we have in our lives that we love and respect, it resulted for me in stress. But also what was missing was this idea I didn't have any meaning because I went out to say I want to make a difference in other people's lives. Expectations, other people's expectations can sometimes keep us from that sense of purpose and meaning. All right, now let me pause for a second as I did before and see if anyone has a response to that. Anything that you might want to share that, Amanda, is it something you want to say? Go ahead, Amanda.
You know, to be honest with you, I guess maybe I have learned to not worry so much about other people's expectations, obviously later in life, but it actually, you're making me reflect on my own children.
Oh.
You know, so I'm seeing that in my children where they're struggling because they think us as parents or other family members or people in society expect a certain thing from them. Just a brief example, my son had a beautiful opportunity, full ride scholarship, and he chose he didn't want it. And so now he's struggling with that, you know, and I'm over here trying to teach him like, well, you made a grown-up decision. So now you have to have the grown-up reaction and answers to people. So it's making me kind of reflect on that, you know, not that I haven't had those own experiences myself, but that's definitely what you just brought up in my mind as you were talking.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Amanda. And I'm sure it helps others too who have children to think about too their influence and how to do that. It's sort of a delicate balance, right?
And I guess it does also affect me too, because, you know, we've come to that point in our lives where we have to separate the fact that, you know, we always think that our children represent us, like we've raised them, so they represent us, right? But then at some point we do have to separate ourselves from that because they are their own adults and their own humans, and they are going to make the decisions they should for themselves, or you hope they do, right?
Yeah.
So there is that reflection also as a parent of like, oh, well, what do all these people think of my parenting of this child when he does these things or she does these things, you know?
Yeah.
And at some point I just go, I've learned to just go, it's not in my hands anymore. It's their life. So, and that's been hard.
Yeah, but good for you though. Good for you for thinking about it and for being that way with them. All right, anyone else before we move on to the next story? Okay, go ahead, Ada. And hi there, Ada.
Hi. You know, I look back on my own journey from hopeless and in enormous pain to healing and to a place of peace, and the creation of the 7 pillars of a happy and successful life, which led to my unique definition of success for me. And that was about, all it led to was knowing who I am in every part of my life, not what anybody else says, but how I define success for me. And that's become the foundation on which everything else I do with anybody else is based.
That's
Because
wonderful.
when you have a unique definition of success, that you really know who you are, it's, I won't always say easy, but you have the freedom to screen out the other voices and the other opinions. And to know that, I love a comment that Stephen Covey made when he said, you know, make sure when you're climbing the ladder of success that it's leaning against the right building. You know, so yeah, I just think claiming our power to be who we are, where we are, how we are, is the key to a happy life.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And uniqueness is a passion of mine too, so I'm glad to hear you talk about that. but I won't go off track on uniqueness because I can very
The
easily.
device already ready to connect.
Okay, I see we have somebody else joining us, and I heard something coming in for a moment, but I guess they're in. All right, so let's move on to the next story. Again, I'll share my story to help you then reflect on your own. So I was in that position. I set out to make a difference in people's lives, and I did that. I worked for a company that helped women on welfare get employment. I was what they called a pre-employment instructor, and I went on and did some social work for a while, investigating child abuse and neglect, looking for this, make a difference, trying to make a difference. And so that's what I was setting out to do. And while I was doing that, working as a social worker, as life has it, my mother passed away suddenly from a heart attack. And because we were so close, as you might have guessed from how I, was so easily guided by her, it just threw me in a whirlwind because now I didn't know what to do with myself and with my life. Because at this point now I'm 30 years old. It was just 4 days before my 31st birthday. And I didn't know what to do because she was kind of the guide for me. And after some long time of grieving and searching for a year or more, I decided to go back to grad school. And then in grad school is when I started studying, who knew, like the little girl on the porch, meaning and how people find meaning. And I did that through religion because I think that's how people find meaning in their lives. So I went on to study that. And it started to move me forward into this. I completed the graduate study, and I have a job teaching that I absolutely love as a tenured professor. And I teach mostly world religions. And for me, it's how cultures and people find meaning. And it's a job that it feels very satisfying. It fulfills my passion. And it only happened after the biggest pain of my life, the most horrible experience of my life of losing my mother. Now, who knew? Who knew that something so tragic could turn out to set me on the path? Now, let me pause and say, I'm not suggesting, I don't want you to feel like you have to have had some tragedy in your life. But the reflection is some things that you think to be the terrible incidents of your lives. Have you had an occasion where it turned out to be so much better than what you thought it could be as a result? Maybe just raise your hand or, okay, Stephanie, okay, Amanda. There are a couple people. You just never know how those situations, even now we're in this terrible, for some, depending on how you view it, this terrible time of this pandemic. Who knows what could come out of it? It's just a matter of getting through it. So I went back, got the degree, got the job, loved teaching, just absolutely love teaching, love students at a university whose mission is very closely aligned to my own. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling like I'm in my purpose. I'm doing life, all is well. Now, fast forward some years later, as life happens, as it does, my brother then now is diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the spring of 2018. By October of 2018, he passed away. So he had these last 6 months that were very painful. Although I have to say, he was very gracious, very kind and loving the whole time. It was incredible. And what I saw, though, was how he couldn't do things in life in those last 6 months that he enjoyed. He loved hanging out with his friends, coming over and playing cards and doing things. He couldn't do any of those things. So after about a month or so after the funeral, when I got over the initial stages of the grief, it made me think about my life once again. You know, that little one that's always thinking about the meaning of life, it came back to me. It's like, okay, I have this job that I love, but what would I do? What would I do that would add even more joy and have a fuller life experience now that I saw that he couldn't have his? And I had been slowly doing the work that I'm doing now, teaching people a little bit about purpose. I've been writing a book, little bits here and there around my job schedule, but it wasn't a priority. So that moment shifted me to make it a priority. I'm going to do this. I'm going to find a way, start a business in which I teach how to find meaning, purpose, and passion. And a week later, I made the decision. A week later, I was on Facebook and boop, popped up a business coach, Jake Ballantyne, if anybody knows him. He just popped up right there saying everything that I need to hear from me. I'm like, this is the one for me. So I start working with him and I create this business during 2019. And I'm doing all these things that I'm telling you now about now. Teaching, meaning, purpose, and passion. Move forward after an incident that was another great heartbreak in my life. Now, let me just pause for a moment and see if anybody let you breathe, because those are kind of heavy. Everybody take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. All right, so now anybody want to comment or say anything before we move on to the bright side of the story? Okay, all right, so now let's move on. Looking back, I discovered from each experience I learned, which I'm sure many of you have learned from your experiences too. But what I did, I looked at how I learned, and then I created a system to teach other people how to do the same thing. Because by the time I made the decision to go into business for myself, I'm pretty much satisfied with my life, solid in passion, in purpose. People say to me, why are you always in a good mood? And it's because I know how to do the things that are meaningful for me. And if they're not meaningful, I don't do them. I learned from all those years ago, if it's not for me, don't do it. Right. And so I have the privilege of doing that in my life, but not just professionally or in jobs, but in everyday activities and what I do at work. If I have the chance, I quickly jump in with something that is aligned with three things. Now, here's what I've been teaching, and now I hope this is a benefit for you. Your business will grow, your life will grow, you will grow if your life is based in your purpose. And if you make your decisions based on that. For me, purpose is not a one-time event, and it's not necessarily this one grand event like I'm going to find a cure for homelessness and solve that problem and everyone, now I've my purpose. For me, purpose is, it could be that, but generally it's expressed through your daily life through three parts of you. Your purpose. Now, let me tell you, if you ever wonder, if anybody here is wondering, what is my purpose? And this is your purpose in your business, in your career. Let's say it like that. Okay. You ready? You ready for it? Here it is. Your purpose. Got this? Your purpose is to express who you really are. Your purpose is to express who you are. Sort of what Ada was talking about earlier. And your business is a vehicle through which you express who you really are. Your job, your business, your profession is the vehicle through which you express who you really are. All right. So now somebody might be saying, well, I don't know. What do you mean? How do I find that? All right. This is what I say, how you find it. All right. I'm going to say four things. First three parts of you. First of all, to be in your purpose, you have to be connected in some way to something you love, your passions, right? We hear people say, oh, find your passion, find your passion. Like it's almost overwhelming to some people because like, I don't know my passion. But think about this. It doesn't have to be all your passions, just one aspect of something you love. One aspect of something you love. Now, there's lots of different things and it could change over time. All right, so that's one piece. One aspect of something you love, your passions. The second thing, one aspect of something that really, really matters to you, your values. So something that really, really matters to you, those are your values. Now we're combining all of these. We have your passions, we have your values. The third one is some aspect of something you do very naturally. You're good at it. It comes easily to you. You probably don't even notice it because it comes so easily to you. But those are natural abilities. Some people might call them your gifts or your strengths or your zone of genius. I call them your natural abilities, something that comes to you very easily. So now you have your passions, your values, and your natural abilities. When you use some aspect of each of those, all three of them have to be in operation, some aspect of all three of those in service to something or someone other than yourself, you're in your purpose. And when you use your business or your career to express that, you're in purpose in your business. Now, let me just pause for a moment. Anyone have anything you want to respond, anything just on your mind real quick before I continue with the last? Go ahead, Stephanie.
I love what you're saying about purpose because it's so true. If you feel like you're in your passion and your purpose, in your spot of gifts, like you talked about the gifts, it's so true. It's amazing how things just kind of work better and things just kind of flow a little easier because you're within that passion. And even if you have a million hats, it doesn't matter because you're still riding within that passion and that gift. And as your gift gets even more acknowledged and more useful, and you see that passion and that gift intertwined together, it's amazing how it just kind of explodes into something amazing. So I love that you're sharing that right now.
It does. And could you all hear Stephanie's energy and passion as she's talking about this? It's so amazing. Like you find that you have that experience yourself. And the key to is always to include something that is important, your values, because some of us, I'm guessing if you're in a group like this, you could have lots of passions, right? Lots of things you love, but to make sure you're doing the right things at the right time, do they have the value? They come naturally to you. And of course, I'm guessing you're all already doing something in service to others. Now, once you get to that point, as you go on with your life and your work, and if you find yourself, I don't know what to do, this thing or that thing comes up, make your decisions based on your purpose. So this is what I call making purpose-based decisions. And which, by the way, the reason why I call it purpose-based, which is what I think is different from purpose-driven, because purpose-driven suggests to me it's sort of an outward aggression kind of focus. Purpose-based is from this inward place, this inner place, because remember, your purpose is to express who you really are deep down. And your passions, your values, your natural abilities are just clues about who you are deep down. All right, so now when you're making your decisions, make your decisions based on your purpose. Ask yourself, does this involve something I love? Does this involve something that really matters to me? Does this involve something I'm good at, naturally good at, and can I serve? Every decision, big or small, this will guide you, and you will always have meaning. You'll always have purpose, and you always have passion in everything you do. I know it to be true because I do it for myself on a regular basis, and I have helped many others do the same thing. So go ahead, Amanda.
So it makes me wonder, because, we always need to grow and change, and we always hesitate sometimes on that because it's out of our comfort zone. And so I found this with myself in certain situations where, like, I definitely try to not obligate myself to things that I don't really want to do or I'm not interested in. However, there are times when I do push myself to do it, maybe for somebody else that I care about, and then I go, that wasn't so bad. I actually enjoyed that. So where do we find that balance?
You actually did it. You did it because, let me say why. Because you said the reason that drove you was because it was for someone you cared about, right?
True.
That is a value of yours. It's important to you to support people you care about.
That's true. Okay.
You just didn't break it down. So like I have these little categories, right? You didn't break it down, but you did. That was a purpose-based decision.
Okay. My husband tries to get me to do all these crazy things and it's out of my comfort zone. And half the time I'm like, that was so awesome. But
Yeah.
I dread it and have anxiety leading all the way up to doing it sometimes.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, Stephanie, that's it. Purpose-based decisions. I encourage everyone here to, as you proceed in your business and your life and all that you do to grow yourself and to grow your business, ask yourself those questions and make your purpose-based decisions. All right, Stephanie, that's it. That's what I have.